Hello.
Hello,
Welcome.
Paul.
Hello, Vessela. Welcome to another Museum FAQ video. I'm Paul Orselli, President and Chief Instigator at POW, Paul Orselli Workshop, here on Long Island. Although as my background indicates, and as my guest, we're lucky to have Vessela Gercheva from Bulgaria, across the waves, across the miles. So hello, Vessela. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you,
Um,
Paul.
so I always like to start out by having people tell us a little bit about their background, sort of how they got to where they are now. So maybe if you could start us out there, and then we can launch into the main part of our conversation.
It's interesting that you're asking because, as you know, I got to where I am in Muzeiko in a big deal because of you, because I met you in Chicago and we talked about starting a children's museum. And as far back as this was, I think it was 2007, it happened. We opened Muzeiko in 2015 after a long period of working together with you, with another colleagues from the US, from Bulgaria, with Liskolnik Architects, with America for Bulgaria Foundation. So for you and for many other reasons, I ended up at Muzeiko, which is open already for a fifth year and is the first and the biggest science centers which is dedicated only for children, only to children. In Bulgaria and in Eastern Europe in general. So it's a big thing for me. It's a project that I dreamed of, and I think I had luck to end up there, to meet
See
you
this.
and to meet all the people on the way.
Well, yeah, I think it was very much a team effort, but this is a nice way to start the video because it just proves that dreams can come true, doesn't it? But
They do.
your background wasn't necessarily in museums per se. So I think you have a whole additional side to your many talents. I think people be interested to hear about your sort of academic and experiential background too.
My training is in archaeology, but my interests have been in promoting cultural heritage and working on cultural heritage with children since my last year in the university. In Bulgaria, this is still not very popular, this kind of public part of the archaeology. So I've started working mostly with children, doing some small things with them. And I've been doing this for a long time, working with other museums, traditional museums in Bulgaria, again with an international team that included you and other colleagues from the US. We were able to work on children's spaces, children's corners, and traditional museums in Bulgaria. I'm very proud to say that more than 90% of them are still working. 5 out of 6 children's corners are still working. And for whomever have worked with a Bulgarian museum, Bulgarian museums are very challenged in their work by perceptions, by financial situations, and many other obstacles. So for me and for my colleagues in the museum, this is really a success that they were able to keep the children's corner operating and children keep incoming. I have many, not many, but I have been working through my career also with in the philanthropy field. When I started the Muzeiko project, I have been working with philanthropy organizations in Bulgaria, which is also an interesting aspect from, and it adds up to my work currently. It helps me plan a lot for Muzeiko.
That's great. So all those pieces come together, and I'll just mention for people because whenever the topic comes up or I tell people that I was lucky enough to work and visit Bulgaria, a number of times, I always tell people you should go to Bulgaria, and there are so many interesting things there, including United Nations World Heritage Sites, many important sites in that. So I think it's wonderful how all those different threads of your experience comes together. And maybe that's a good way to launch into our conversation, because you've worked on many projects with partners from all around Bulgaria and different parts of Bulgaria and Europe, and obviously with international partners. So I thought it would be interesting and helpful to people watching the video today to get your perspective on both opportunities and challenges of working with teams that are sort of physically distant from each other. Because while it is great, and we were just talking, now everyone is using Zoom so much, and we have these different ways of communicating with each other electronically, but there is something very different between having a conversation like this electronically and being in the same physical space and being able to walk around or see things or talk about things or try things out together in the same space. So maybe just to start us out, if you could talk about some things that have struck you from your experience, like I say, both opportunities and challenges or difficulties of working with teams that are spread out around the world. Maybe you could start us out there.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I'll just say it to clear it out. I think it's clear that without this kind of online communication, this distance communication, projects like Muzeiko would have never been possible, or at least wouldn't have looked like that. So it's an enormous advantage that we can sit wherever we sit across oceans and still hear each other and pick each other's brains and discuss not only light conversations like this one, but really complicated projects and matters. So it's obvious that this communication has made possible really big things, not only Muzeiko, but also other projects that me and other people have worked on. What is my personal kind of paradox, maybe, from long distance communication is I have always liked and I have always looked at myself as a person who who gets things done, who moves projects forward, who moves issues forward. So for me, of course, the communication has always been personal, but my main focus in communication has always been move things together in a practical way. And Bulgaria and probably many places in the world are a bit different from that. People would like to spend more small talks, personal time together. And I remember and my friends reminded me nicely during this lockdown how many times I have said it's such a waste of time, I should travel to see the people on this project, or it's such a waste of time that we can't talk on the phone, but I have to attend a meeting personally. And surprisingly to me, because this lockdown gave us exactly this, like we not only couldn't, but it was not possible to see each other personally. So the only way to move things forward was handling this online meetings, which disabled small talks, disabled personal communication. There was no time for coffee and all of that. And to my own surprise, I really hated it. I hated not being able to be with people personally. Of course, I appreciated the communication, because without it, a lot more things would have stopped than have stopped already. But I really hated it. I missed I missed being with people. I missed the body language. The online communication completely deprived me from understanding what the person or the people in the meeting think about or feel. How do they feel? So it's my own learning about this. That despite everything that I've been saying, I really like and prefer being with people physically, and I miss that a lot. Despite from that, we were able to move a few projects in Muzeiko. One really nice project, which you would have loved being here, seeing, for a children's space in a library in a city in Bulgaria, which is quite far away from Sofia. So we moved it completely with online communication. Some of the people from the team of the library in Russia I have never met. I look forward to meeting them, to talking them in person, to having coffee, and losing some time for personal matters. But we were able to move this project completely from zero to, we're not at the end still, but we're very near to the end. We moved it through distance communication. So
So
it's so.
yeah, but so that's just to talk about that library project that you mentioned. So you say that you've never met those people in person.
Some of
So
them, yeah.
how did that project? What sort of started that project, and how did you connect together to make it happen?
We started the project with personal meeting. That was before the lockdown in January, in the beginning of January. But the serious part of the work took place February, March, April, and some of the people that were part of the team I haven't met in person, because in Sofia, in the start of the project, we met the key people from the library, and a lot more people took part after that. And really what stands out in my mind is that I'm looking forward to see them in person. They were extremely practical in meetings, extremely to the point, very helpful, they were great, but I still look forward learning more about them.
Well, this is interesting because you mentioned really how we met years ago in Chicago, and I was giving a presentation at a conference, and then you came up. As often happens, people come up after a presentation and you talk, and you shared with me that you were from Bulgaria, which at that point I don't think I had even met anybody from Bulgaria, to be honest. And that you really wanted to have a interactive museum and something that was not in Bulgaria. And then when you walked away, I thought, wow, that was great. And then I thought, I'm never going to see this person again. I'm never going to be in Bulgaria. That was a very nice conversation, but it doesn't mean anything to me or my life, going forward. But of course, that turned out not to be true. So I just think it's interesting that even when you're working on a project with partners that are distant from you, there still is this balance between the sort of in-person and the very personal aspect of things, and the sort of necessity of the remote aspect of things, email, telephone, Skype, Zoom, whatever else. But there's still this balance between the very personal things and the in-person things and the distant things. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned that now you really miss the in-person things and the body language and the coffee and the small talk. So that's something that comes out of a positive thing that comes from in-person things. Are there positive things that you mentioned that a lot of these projects without these remote communication tools, they still might have happened, but the way they happened and the end result might well have been different. So I'm wondering if there are other things or ways that you think people can use these remote communication tools to really help a project, or some aspects of a remote communication that you think are really important and positive, or things that people can really look out for or be thinking about?
I do definitely think there are a lot more positive things. One thing, for example, it's very difficult to go unprepared on an online meeting. When it's a personal meeting, it's more easy to kind of blend with the group, or join an opinion or something like that. While when it's online, you really need to um, show what you've done, to have some basis for discussion, and it kind of gets you very much more disciplined in preparation. Another thing is that, as I said, it's much more difficult to be abstract and not to the point in an online meeting. Words count much more, and that I appreciate this. I like it when words count, and I like it when people use the time to measure the words, to use the right words. So I do appreciate that people kind of think more in depth about what they're going to say, which is not always the case in in-person meetings. Another thing which I find immensely positive, I don't know if in the US this is such a cultural thing. In Bulgaria, especially in some parts of Bulgaria, people do talk one over the other, talk at one and the same time. And it's been, in some of in-person meetings, it's been difficult for me really to understand what people say in the given moment. This is really not possible, technically not possible in online communication. So this makes communication a lot clearer, and I've noticed that people get less confused about what we agreed upon, what we said, how we are going to move forward, and I do appreciate this. I find it one of the things I find most challenging in working with partners and with people in general is that on one and the same agreement you have totally different perspectives from both sides. I think online meetings have done this easier because it's more difficult to get confused, or at least when you get confused, if you feel the urge to clarify. I do find this very, very positive.
That's interesting that you just mentioned that sometimes you will walk away from a meeting or a group email or something, and you feel like, okay, this, we've all agreed on this, and then as you get further down the line, you're like, well, wait a second, that's not what I thought that was about, or
Yeah.
that, what do you mean this is a big yellow chair? I thought it was going to be a small blue chair, and then
Yeah.
how did that happen? I thought we agreed on this. I think that might be the biggest challenge, maybe for any project, whether it's people all near each other, or
Yeah.
that where you have a group of people who are coming together in a sincere and positive way, and then there are these points that somehow get misinterpreted or misunderstood, and if they are a big point or a crucial point about a building or an exhibit project, that's really a problem. So maybe just as we wrap up here, I'd just be interested, maybe if you wouldn't mind sort of talking about that, thinking about situations, which I'm sure you and I have both been in, where you think, okay, well, we all agreed on this, but now it's clear that you didn't have the same takeaway that I did. I mean, have you um, have you thought of any ways to avoid that, I suppose, would be the question. And you might say no, but I'd just be interested, because that seems to be when there are problems with teams and communication, that seems maybe to be one of the really big problems that can happen.
Definitely. Millions of times I've been there. Maybe that's, again, one of the very positive things that we've got through the online meetings, because this format of the meetings makes it nearly impossible for you not to keep notes, or not to distribute a memo, or not to do this kind of very simple, practical, technical things, which we somehow tend to avoid.
Well, and you can record the meeting and say, wait a second, you said that right there.
I haven't used this. You can, yeah, and you can record the meeting, but this format of communication through this media has made it much more easier for me to get on one and the same understanding around the table. Maybe the fact that people have to talk one after the other and not one with the other, this helps tremendously for that. But the joke aside, I think online communication helps on that. Makes it easier for people to makes it more necessary for people to clarify their thoughts fully.
Well, if I had known that both of us would have extolled the virtues and the positive aspects of online communication so much, I would have tried to get Zoom to sponsor this particular conversation. But I take your point. I think the things that you mentioned in terms of people needing to be clear and people needing to be organized and people actually almost forced to take turns to talk and listen are all things that maybe could carry over in a positive way to in-person meetings and make them more effective also for projects. So, well, Vessela, I really, not only do I appreciate you taking the time, because it's always great to see you and speak with you, but I can't tell you how delighted I am that the network has behaved itself miraculously across the miles and across the transatlantic cable or the satellites or whatever else, so that our conversation wasn't like, like sometimes happens. So that's great.
It was very smooth.
It was. Well, that's because you are such a smooth communicator. So that's that works out.
I will remember this and stick to this when we get back to personal meetings.
Yeah, Paul. I mean, like I mean that. I mean, I think all the things that you mentioned in terms of positive aspects or ways to frame effective online communication could very well carry over to in-person meetings and make them, make us more conscious of ways to make them better meetings for everyone. So thanks.
Even if not, I would love to get back to personal meetings, even with less carrying on. Thank you, Paul, too. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time.